Hey everybody, how's everybody doing today? I hope no matter where you're at in the world, that the world is treating you fine today. So in today's show, we are going to talk about risk. Now, risk comes in many different forms. For some people, it's as simple as taking, some type of job or project at work. That's a risk because you don't know if you're going to succeed. For others, it might be more of a creative element. Maybe it's a painting or a piece of artwork that, they're taking a bold chance on. For others, risk might be just simply walking out that door. In our dangerous world today, just simply breathing and living can sometimes be a risk. But risks are something that we all do, whether we think about it or not. But today I'm going to talk about two different risks. One that I think most of us have done. I'm going to assume most of us have done this to a point. It might not be to the exact, extreme that I went through, but I think we all have done it at one point or another. So let me ask you a question. If you are single, or maybe you were single at one time, did you ever do something so bold to meet somebody that looking back at it, you can't believe that you did? Maybe it was going into a place like a club or a bar that you would have never gone into, or maybe it's dating someone that culturally your family would have been happy with, or maybe it was just, someone you bump into a grocery store and say, hey, and next thing you know, you're off on some, crazy adventure together. Was it wild? Was it unlike you? Would you do it again? Or was it so out of character for you, out of your own who you are, that you wouldn't tell anybody? It's your own little personal secret. Imagine you're married and you've never told your spouse that, hey, this one time when I was 19, I went into some sex store and there was this girl there and, one thing led to another, but you've never told that. So no matter what it is, we all have them and we all do them, especially when we're young. It happens even when we're older. The world, this idea that only young people take risks, doesn't exist. I can tell you, old people, which I'm not quite old yet, but I'm slowly getting up there. We all take risks still. I know I've taken risks, not recently, but, I've taken them in my time. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, in the risks. Now, you're probably asking, what the hell does risks and dating have to do with Plan 9 from Outer Space, a terrible science fiction movie? Well, it actually has a lot to do with it, because risks are what drove that movie to become what it is. It was a gamble based on a dream or a vision of something. Dating is the same thing. It's a risk and it's a gamble on a vision or a dream of something that we inspire to, be it, love, companionship, or just a good, horny romp, whatever it is, that's what we're going for. And so the two things kind of coincide together in a weird way that hopefully, you'll go along this road with me. Dating has changed a lot in the last, I would say, 20 years. It used to be that the dating pool that you would date into was only as big as, whatever was in your town or your college that you went to, but it was always confined into your area, meaning you had to be a part of it. So it had to be your church group, or it had to be at the local supermarket, library, whatever it was, your place of work. You actually had to be physically there. With the internet, it opened up the world. Suddenly you didn't have to physically be there. It could be someone in another city, nearby, or another county, or even another state. And so it really opened up that the dating pool went from being a little river in your backyard to being that whole cliche saying, it's, big ocean. And it suddenly did become a big ocean. It became a big ocean with lots of people in it. And that really opened up a lot of possibilities, good and bad, for people. And that's kind of where my story of this happens. Now, risks are choices. We don't have to do them. But when they succeed and we take that gamble, it's unlike anything else that you can experience, especially when the risk is something that is bold and the odds of it succeeding are great. You can take a small risk by, let's say, and you try a new soda at a place you've never been to and you drink it and suddenly that soda is like, wow, it's amazing. But was it that big of a bold of a risk? Probably not. Or you could go off to a whole nother country and vacation, even though you know nothing about the culture, nothing about the food, nothing about the people, anything, just because you want to immerse yourself, and then come to find out that experience was great. Well, the payoff is bigger, right? And so I'm going to tell you two different stories, and they're both about risk, like I said. And they're both about bold adventures. Our story number one has to do with a director named Edward Wood Jr., better known as Ed Wood. And the other one is about me and one of the craziest dating adventures I had when I was much, much younger. And it's one that I've told a few times to a couple different people over the years. And even though it happened to me, I still can't believe that A, I did it, and B, that the ending ended the way it did, because it's kind of crazy. And Ed, well, his is pretty bold. He made what is undoubtedly listed by some people as the worst movie of all time. And yet, he made something that some people would quibble as, well, he had no talent, he didn't have any budget. It didn't stop him, because he made something that he believed in. And that's what you do. You take those risks. You make something out of something that you believe in. So we're going to start with my story. And why my story? Well, because I'm the one telling the story. So I get to tell my part first. My little story begins in the year of, let me see here. Honestly, I can't really remember the year. Like, I can knock it down to a certain month or date. I think it would have been about 1999, based off other events that are circling around in my mind. This story took place sometime in 1999. It seems credible, so we're going to go with that, okay? The internet was still a new thing, and it had been around for a few years, but it was just really catching up with the masses. And it was all thanks to AOL. Remember that AOL thing? It really kicked down the door for a lot of us. Before that, the internet was, and it had been around for a long time, but the internet hadn't been the thing of the masses. And with AOL coming out, it was really opening up that connection with people. And I was among the many newbies who took that dive in and just couldn't get enough of it. You see, I was a pretty shy kid. And so a lot of people in my town, which wasn't small, I lived in a pretty big town of over 100,000 people. And so being that I was so shy, I kind of was like, I needed a cover. I couldn't just walk out to the local grocery store and bump into, a girl and say, hey, my name is Jose, I was shy. That wasn't going to happen. But the computer, it kind of gave me that shield a little, where that shyness came down a little. Not a whole lot, but it came down a little bit. And so I started meeting people. And I would meet people who lived in other cities, nearby counties, and even a couple other states. And even once or twice, I even met people who lived in other countries. I think one was England, and I want to say that the other one was in France. But it's been so many years. I know it definitely was England, but I can't remember if it was France or Spain for the other one. Anyways, and it was a new experience, and know about things that you had no idea. I learned all about, Texas before I ever moved to Texas. I started learning about other states, New York, Florida, Ohio. I started learning about cultures and the differences. To somebody who had grown up and primarily lived my whole life in California, it was different. It was interesting, and I loved it. I loved talking to people and exploring people's ideas and cultures and, all these things that we don't get to see in our own little world. And bonds also were developed, strong bonds. And that's where my story really starts, okay? And it starts with a girl named Amy. Now, Amy doesn't have a last name, mostly because I can't remember her last name, which I know might sound terrible, but it really doesn't matter. But her name was Amy. And Amy lived in the city of Modesto. Now, that's a city in the upper middle part of the state, in the central valley of California, if you're not familiar with California. It's kind of north of Fresno, but south of Stockton. And Modesto was my destination of this journey that I took. And I was coming from Southern California, Anaheim, California to be exact. And that was my point of origin. Now, I had known Amy and this is going to sound crazy, so hold on, okay? Maybe it won't sound crazy to some of you, but to some, it's going to be like, this shock, okay? I had known Amy only for a few days, okay? But we had been talking regularly, like night and day. Like it seemed like all the time we were getting this connection, At least that's what I was thinking. We were having that connection. So one day she was just like, hey, you know what? We should meet. And I was young and, stupid, I guess, and said, yeah, why not? Let's do that. I looked at a map and I'm like, yeah, that doesn't seem that far. What was I thinking, right? Anyways, being young and naive and didn't know any better, I just went ahead and decided, yeah, let me go ahead and do it. So at around midnight, I got on the highway. I just started driving and driving and driving. And pretty soon I was passing LA, Bakersfield, Modesto, Merced, and finally into Modesto. And I showed up at her house at like 5 or 6. Now, don't hold me to those times because I know it seems like, wow, you were killing time. But that's just what my mind feels like. It was like early in the morning. Could have been maybe even as late as 7 or 8. But anyways, it doesn't really matter. It was in the morning. And I get there and I knock on her door. And guess what happened? She completely forgot that I was even coming. She had fallen asleep. And she didn't really think that I would do it. I mean, again, this is the early days and I was seeming like some weirdo guy who just showed up at her door, and she's probably freaking out thinking, oh my God, this guy actually showed up. And here on my end, I was thinking, oh my God, I can't believe that I actually showed up. But there we were. And so it was this craziness that had happened, I took a chance because even at that age, even at that small time, I was already thinking I wanted more out of life. And that was what the bold chance was. Was I going to find that connection with somebody? Was I going to go out and find that person? And that's what my journey was all about, was about finding somebody. Some would say that it was a crazy, stab at, at that happiness that, I was searching for. But whatever it was, I went looking for it. Now, on the flip side, Ed Wood was no stranger to making movies. Before he had made Plan 9 from Outer Space, he had made maybe about a dozen other movies, probably a little bit more. He did make at least, a dozen other films before Plan 9. And so this wasn't, as they say, his first rodeo. But what a ride that he had that has left an impact. Because even though people chalk it up as a bad movie, even bad movies can be influential to people, because the ideas that are implanted in those bad movies sometimes can be pulled out and be grown into larger, better works. Now, Edward Davis Wood Jr. was born on October 10th, 1924, and he died on December 10th, 1978, which was only about 2 months after I was born. He was born in October. I was born in October, so I wouldn't say we have connections there, but it was rough. When I saw that, I was like, oh, he's an October baby. And he had made movies like Glenda or Glenda, Jailbait, Bride of the Monster, and of course, Plan 9. Now, Plan 9 was originally created in 1956, but it wouldn't be released until 1959, and it featured one Bela Lugosi in his final movie. In fact, he passed away during the production of the movie. Now, what does all that have to do with risks? Well, here's the thing, and why risks with Wood was something. He took this idea, and it was an audacious idea. Let me tell you, you will not find another movie that has such a ridiculous plot. And I say plot and story in quotations because it's kind of far-fetched, But then it's not, because it kind of, when you look at other science fiction movies from the time, it kind of makes sense because it was part of the worry, especially after World War II. There was this big worry that, science was going to go crazy. We had, done the whole atomic bomb, and was that what we were rushing towards? And I could understand that was this big fear. And so Plan 9 really falls into an idea of fear. But what he did is he took that story and he really ran with it. And, some people would say that he did a horrible job of it. And yet other people would say, no, he was being a visionary. And of course, visionaries don't always succeed. Visionaries are, so wrapped up in their vision that, sometimes they don't see the smaller details and things can, go haywire. Because you see, here's the thing. And it's always about grand ideas. Wood had these grand ideas, these big, bold, flashy ideas. And that's what he had for Plan 9. He had this big, bold idea. He just didn't have any money. He really didn't have a whole lot of talent, and he was, stopped at every turn to create this idea, instead of having, now he could have said, well, I don't have the greatest actors, I don't have the greatest talent, and I don't have all the money that I need. Maybe I will not do it. And that's what a lot of people would do. But people who take bold risks, people who think a little bit outside that box, will say, you know what, screw it. I'm going to film this, and I'm going to use stock footage that doesn't match up with my movie. I am going to create an airplane in a scene where the pilots are clearly reading off the script on their lap. I'm going to make flying saucers and put them on a string and flash them back and forth. And you know what? To the hell with the rest of you. To the hell is what they're going to say. And that, my friends, is a risk. He took that risk. He said, I don't care that I don't have the resources or the talent to make this movie that I have ingeniously made, but he did it anyways. Now, he had that risk and, he took it, and you can say, well, what happened? What was the results of that risk? Well, so let's find out what the risks were and what the results were. Now, going back to Modesto, here I am in Modesto with Amy, and Amy was like, yeah, you're a nice guy and everything, but I'm going to go off with my friends to the river. Now, Amy was like, didn't invite me, didn't say, hey, you should come with my friends, you're a cool guy, and everything. She was just like, let's get you into a motel and you can sit there. I don't know what to do. Bye. And that's what we did. We found a local motel. I checked in and I sat there. I sat there on a bed thinking, oh my God, what the hell am I doing here? What was I thinking? And I don't remember exactly what I was thinking, but I'm sure my mind was racing at 1 billion times a second. Had it been done today, of course, it would have been all over social media and it would have been documented crazily, but back then there wasn't any of that. And so I was left alone in a room without any real thoughts as to what I was about to do. Amy said, hey, I'm going to go to the river and I'll come by later on and we'll talk. I was so freaked out that after about 2 or 3 hours, I was like, I gotta go. I gotta get out of here because I don't know what's gonna happen here. What was I thinking, And so I got back in my car and I headed back south. And what I realized then also was just how far the distance was. And, I had looked down on a map and it seemed like it wasn't that far. But the reality is I had never driven that far in my life. So I didn't really realize what kind of gas mileage my car was going to need. It was like a Mazda. So it actually did pretty good on mileage. But here I was, I had, I don't remember, maybe $20, and I was counting on that $20 to get me home. So I filled up before I got, out of town, and I just drove and I drove and I drove. Well, right before, if you've ever driven down Interstate 5 in California, actually was down 99, I believe. Yeah. So I went down, Highway 99 and then it eventually merges with 5, if I remember right? And you get to this specific point, a little city called Grapevine. And Grapevine is kind of right there at the edge of going into the mountains, into the Grapevine Pass, which will lead you down into Southern California. That's where I ran out of gas. Yeah. There was a couple gas stations and I pulled into a parking spot and I sat there and I realized I didn't have enough gas because, when you're going uphill and through the mountains, it burns more gas. And I was almost near empty and I thought, I am not going to make it. I am not going to make it into the mountains and then through the mountains and then back down. I had 50 cents with me and 50 cents only. And I was thinking, what the hell am I going to do? So I put the 50 cents into, a payphone and I called a friend of mine. Her name was Valerie. And I called Valerie and I said, Valerie, on a voicemail, by the way, because she didn't pick up. And I left her a voicemail and I said, Valerie, here's where I am. Here's what the problem is. And here's what I need. I need for you to bring me some money if you can, possibly to help me out. This is what I did. I went foolishly to meet this girl. And I tried to say this within like 2-3 minutes because that's all the time you had, And then I went back into my car and I sat there and I waited and waited and waited. And 5 hours later, guess who pulls into the gas station? But Valerie with gas money. I told her what I did, and she gave me that look like, what are you, crazy? What the hell are you thinking? And I felt so stupid at that moment. Like, oh my God, I cannot believe I did this, and I will never, ever do this again. Yeah, well, of course, I didn't learn my lesson at the time. But anyways, that's for a different date, right? And that was the end of my story. It was this bold chance to take on an opportunity to do something that it was a chance to do something in which I thought that the reward would be great. And it didn't happen. It kind of ended up, backfiring on me. But still, I took that risk because that's what you have to do, right? Take that risk. Going back to Ed Wood and our movie here. If you've never seen Plan 9, I would say you should really definitely watch it. It's not honestly as bad. Its legacy is that this is a horrible movie that, isn't, worth your time. But it's not. It's actually a really good movie. It just was missing something. And I honestly think that the vision of it was spot on. What was missing from it was the fact that it didn't have money for the production of it. And maybe also the hands of a different director, so maybe talent was also missing too. Gotta have that too. And going over what Plan 9 is, let me tell you what Plan 9 is, okay? So Plan 9, humans are about to create, this doomsday device that's gonna wipe us out from the universe, and aliens come down and see this, and what they've decided to do was to resurrect the dead. And causes this great commotion. They would swoop in, save us, and say, but you have to learn a lesson here. You cannot go off and create this bomb that will destroy the universe. Really, honestly, that is really of the times an ingenious idea that here we are, mankind's going to destroy us, and another civilization is going to come down and, give us a warning about don't do it. Learn to live together. Doesn't that sound like another movie? Another different movie called The Day the Earth Stood Still? Kinda? Now, of course, he took it and he added this whole bringing the ghouls, from the dead as it was originally called. That was the far-fetched. And like I said, the acting is horrible and the special effects are even worse. But somewhere deep down in that story, there was something there. Just like there was something there in my odyssey to go meet Amy. There was this desire for something more. Plan 9 from Outer Space failed miserably, but it wasn't a complete disaster. It's a movie that has long lived and will continue to live and will continue to carry out Ed Wood's name till the end of time. We know who Ed Wood is now because of that movie. We will, they made what a bigger thing is. They made a movie about his life, hello. Do you think we would have, made a movie about him without Plan 9 and all his other movies? No, we wouldn't. There's been greater directors with greater talent, but do they get movies made after their lives? Do we have a Steven Spielberg movie? No. William Wyler's got in a movie? No. Stanley Kubrick, has he got in a movie? No. But Ed Wood was different. He was a visionary who took bold risks. And that's what it's all about, right? If you ever get a chance to watch Plan 9 from Outer Space, I highly recommend it. Yes, it's a bad movie, but, it's entertainment, and it's good entertainment, and it's a lot of fun, too. Sit around, grab a couple friends, family members, and watch it together. There's nothing, greater than watching, a flop, with people that you love, and, hooting and hollering about, what you're seeing. What was the outcome, you could say, of both of our experiences? Well, Ed lives in infamy now. And as for me, I actually ended up staying friends with Amy, believe it or not, quite a while afterwards. And she always apologized for that. I lost touch with her many, many moons ago. But she always apologized for how she was that day when she went off with her friends. She said she was just really nervous and everything. And it was a different time. Since then, online dating has become the norm. It has become a thing to the point where sometimes it's weird if you actually meet somebody face to face. But at the time, it was not as common as it is now. So thank you so much for joining me on today's show and exploring a little bit about Plan 9 from Outer Space and a little bit about Ed Wood and my horrible dating life once upon a time. You can always follow us on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and any place where you can leave an opinion of any kind. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or our home on the web. Take care of yourselves no matter where you are. Don't take any bold risks that don't have good rewards, and don't take any risks that will endanger you. We need each one of you in the world. Take care of yourself and have a great day.